What's up? I'm Adam. That's Tate. That means this is another episode of the NIL Show, Season 2, Episode 24. Lots going on, not so much in our world. Things are starting to kind of wind down a little bit in our world as it relates to moments that we like to celebrate. We've got a lot of softball and baseball ahead of us, but there's definitely a wind down after April. You know, as people start looking towards June and summer planning. What has not wound down is forecasting the future of what this fall and beyond will look like in college sports. Tate, tell the people why it's a big week in college sports.
2 words, something called the House Settlement.
The House Settlement. That's 3 words.
I didn't say I just said House Settlement.
That's fair. We got to run the tape back on that one. But House Settlement is happening.
Yeah. House Settlement is happening. It's being voted on right now. Today is Wednesday, May 22nd. And so far, the Big 12 and the ACC have met to approve the terms of the settlement in court. What that means, there's a lot of tentacles to this, folks. It's involving back pay for NIL for Division I athletes over a set period of time to receive damages. It also ties in revenue sharing for current and future college athletes. And then also people are now trying to tie in future exemptions from class action lawsuits going forward. So we're dealing with a lot here. It's a busy week. And then, you also have 2 sides of the fence now with your mid-major G5 schools and your P4 schools and how they are being left to divvy up the pie, which we can dive into, but that's caused a lot of hubbub.
Yeah. So this is, I mean, we don't have to be the resident experts on all this legislation. You can follow Mitt Winter. You can read anything on ESPN. You can read anything on The Athletic, Sportico, CBS Sports. This is the number one topic that's being talked about across the collegiate sports industry and honestly, a lot of the sports industry on a broader scale, because this spells this case and the subsequent settlement that is going to happen, and we'll talk about why this is going to happen, is essentially the nail in the coffin of amateurism as it relates to college sports. And we talked about this settlement is going to happen. I think it took the Big 12, which was the first conference to vote on this minutes, to decide that, yes, they wanted to pursue the settlement. Later on in the afternoon, this was yesterday, May 21st, the ACC voted to approve it. Full anticipation is that every other conference will vote to approve it. Why are conferences so quick to approve and pursue this settlement instead of actually taking this to court and trying to staunchly defend the amateurism model that they have built their entire reputation on previously?
Yeah, all comes down to one thing. The NCAA and collegiate sports track record in court is not stellar over the past 10 plus years. As I was talking to somebody yesterday, I was like, that's how we got here. I think that's a piece that a lot of folks have kind of forgotten about as we enter year 3, is they tend to look back and think that the NCAA was proactive and they just woke up and decided one day that, hey, athletes should be able to monetize their name, image, and likeness. That's not how it happened. They didn't come to that decision on their own. It was forced on them by the courts. The same courts who have struck down transfer regulations, the same courts who have said you have to, should be able to award athletes, money for their academic achievements in the Alston cases. They know their track record is not good. It's also in front of Judge Claudia Wilkin, who's the same judge that ruled on the O'Bannon case, which domino led to NIL as we know it. So they looked at that and they looked at the fact that, okay, if we go into this and we lose, which is likely, they have about a $20 billion check that would be sitting there waiting for them to write. They're looking at this settlement and saying, let's not even bother. Let's try to wrap this up with about $2.7 billion in damages. So when you look at that, it makes a lot of sense on there and why they wouldn't.
Well, and effectively, when a decision like that comes down and you lose in a case like this, where damages are due, those damages are due immediately. You don't get to put that on a payment plan
Yes.
And that essentially would bankrupt the NCAA. So settlement is really the only option forward for them. But even as they're pursuing settlement, there's the two elements here. There's the back pay. So looking backwards back to 2016, as this case was brought in 2020. So, statute of limitations goes back 4 years. So there's back pay to athletes who competed as early as 2016, which when was your last year of competition?
19. I'm waiting for however big my check will be.
Yeah, baby. I love it. And then there's forward-looking rev share, right? So there's a lot of details left to be sorted out in what that forward-looking settlement looks like. But there's also some interesting things about the back pay. So how they're looking at it right now is that the NCAA as an institution or an organization, or whatever you want to call them these days, would be responsible for 1.1 billion of that 2.7, and then which would be about 40%. And then the remaining autonomous for Power 5 schools as it relates to back pay, because the Pac-12 is still responsible for making good on these damages. Those autonomous 5 conferences would be responsible for the remaining 60% of that. But these mid-major schools, the FCS, they're not super pleased about being on the hook in theory for that 1.1 billion. How does that work? If the NCAA is saying, no, we're paying it as the NCAA, why does that tick off, mid-majors and some of these FCS?
Because it's really going to cut into the payments they count on receiving from the NCAA for tournament berths, other various funds. There's a laundry list of where they collect those from, but that's where that money is going to largely be affected, is money that they have budgeted for, that they account for. Your checks are going to come in a little smaller now, and that's really going to affect how you operate your athletic department. And, I've said it a million times on the show, I played at a mid-major school who didn't have football, very reliant on receiving those checks and that sustenance from the NCAA. If you start to affect that, man, that really starts to affect the operations of your athletic department and what you can provide for athletes. They're hanging on by a thread as it is. So this really affects them. And then the other piece of this is they have no say in this. They're not meeting to vote on anything this week. The Big 12 and the SEC are voting. The Southland Conference is not meeting to vote this week. They're just getting told, this is what's happening. Sorry, best of luck. Val Ackerman, the Big East commissioner, has been very public this week in saying, hey, this isn't right. The majority of these damages and back pay is going to go towards Power 5 football players, is where the large majority of this would go. And she's exactly right. She's like, we don't even have football. Most of our institutions don't even have football. How does this affect us? And there was one anonymous G5 AD who was like, most of this money is going to go to pay players like Zion Williamson. He's like, this doesn't help us in any way, shape, or form. So
yeah. Which brings up another kind of interesting factor here of Title IX, right? In Title IX, there's a lot to be said about it. It's had huge impact on creating opportunities for women in collegiate athletics and to pursue degrees, but it's also not the most well-written form of legislation. And I think you said this the other day, but it's hilarious. You go around and you talk about let's talk about your Title IX compliance, and kind of the running phrase is, we're working towards compliance. Nobody's 100% in compliance with Title IX. We are moving towards incrementally aligning our policies and programs in a compliant way with Title IX. So that's the other kind of piece here that's getting brought into this conversation. And it's not so much just about football's bad and everything else is good. It's way more about how does this impact these other policies that we are federally tied to and responsible for upholding, as it relates to, one, we are an institution of education that's supposed to provide opportunities to all of our students, married with, hey, we are the essentially pro football program, 0.5. We're the half pro football program that really doesn't care about any other operating organization within that institution, because they are the front porch of the university. They are the arguably most recognizable brand of that university and the biggest revenue driver. So how does this like back pay / forward revenue sharing, how do institutions and even individuals look at seeing where they would fit in that hierarchy of, I played men's volleyball. We cost our institution, not a lot because equipment's not expensive and, whatever, but we cost our institution more money than we made our institution, versus a football program who's saying, we are bringing in 85% of your operating budget just by our media rights deal alone.
Yeah. If I had an answer, probably wouldn't be on this podcast right now.
That's what we love to say.
I will say, talk to a number of schools this week and people who kind of have to sit in some of these decision-making chairs, and they realistically don't have an answer either. And that kind of brings us into a perfect segue of, now this is really bringing up a lot of questions around, okay, collectives are not addressed in this settlement. So a lot of people are wondering, what does this do? When you talk about revenue sharing, and right now there's rough numbers being thrown around of 15 to 25 million is that's been the thought for a couple of years now, is around that 20 million mark. If you're a P4 school, that is what you will have as a new baseline number of revenue share towards your athletes. How do you divvy that up? Who is writing the checks and directly making those payments? And then what does your collective operate in? And I was listening to some comments, Russell Whitehead of the Collective Association made yesterday, and he's exactly right. He was like, people are out of their minds, I'm paraphrasing here, if they think that there won't be a space for collectives
totally
in this new space, because there's always going to be a competitive drive. There's always going to be a competitive advantage. My opinion, 20 million, if that's the number, may just turn into the new baseline, and you're still going to have coaches saying, well, I heard X school is at 25. I need to get to 30. I still think it's going to happen. There's always going to be that room in collegiate sports.
Well, like we've said, that's the baseline, right? That's the new competitive floor, and everybody's going to want to command something above that floor if you're bringing more value than somebody who's on the floor level. So, it's just this interesting circle of life. Maybe we can get some background music, a little Lion King theme here. Circle of life of like, oh, NIL, policy changes. We're supposed to get rid of bags of cash that were passed under the table. Oh, oops, that didn't happen. It just meant that the bags of cash were passed over the table in some situations, and in other situations, bags of cash were still passed under the table. And now we're moving towards revenue sharing and all this stuff that's supposed to say, oh, great, that's going to solve the bags of cash changing hands problem that we got now with collectives. It's like, no, that's not going to happen. As long as there is a competitive landscape where there is a significant amount of money to be paid as a result of finding success in that competitive landscape, there will be people who are willing to pay a percentage or a portion of whatever they have, whatever they stand to gain in order to gain that competitive advantage. So it's just ironic and funny to me. We were just talking about this right before we started, of like, we think that solving these problems is going to get away from the, nefarious like pursuit, I guess, of gaining that competitive edge through cash or through money or through payment. And as long as we can continue to drive the value of whatever this sports property is higher and higher to people at the top, people in the middle and people at the bottom are going to try their best to grapple, pursue, collect their portion of whatever value is being created. And it's not always going to go through the right channels. I don't have anything else to say other than that. It's just, it's frustrating. I think when, this is what we were talking about a little bit before, is like, I understand I probably have a little bit more of an old school perspective, I won't call it traditional because I very firmly believe in NIL. I very firmly believe in compensating collegiate athletes. I can call it maybe a purist perspective, which even that I hesitate to say because, well, what is a pure expression? And of course, anybody who believes that their expression or understanding of how it should be is the most pure is going to say that, oh, this is the way it should be. But we see a lot of news about these PE firms starting to get into college sports, and again, it's just this really interesting model is taking shape of. There are obviously a lot of people that see an insane ceiling of value that we haven't realized yet in college sports. So it's really a battle for who owns that future value, who's going to benefit from that future value, and the incumbent leaders are probably not super incentivized to equally share or appropriately share what that future value is. I think what we see a lot of these models that are coming out now are saying, we will give you this much because we see in the long run that is going to be inconsequential for the value that we can extract from this in the future. But I don't know. I mean, you saw this PE stuff come out. You were the one that was updating me on it. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, you hit it right on the head. I think one of the things that stuck out to me was how different this is positioned to be. If a private equity firm comes in and bolsters an athletic department, it's going to be an instant influx of cash, which athletic departments desperately need right now, especially as we enter this rev share era. It's going to be tough for a lot of them, looking at a lot of the uncertainty, to turn down a check of $100 million in hand to do what you need to do with facilities, do what you need to do with revenue share, do what you need to do with staff salaries, coaches buyouts, everything that goes into the massive spending of athletic departments. It's going to be tough for them to say no to some of this, especially because of how differently it is set up. It's private equity, but it's not. I again, shout out to Mitt Winter. He put this best this morning. He said, this is more like private credit than it is equity. They're not going to come in and take a ownership stake in an athletic department or in a university. It's going to act as a loan, essentially, like you're getting a loan from a bank on credit. But this obviously adds a whole new layer of twist to who are the stakeholders on these major decisions, who's going to start being the ones to allocate where this money is going to. You're adding a lot more chefs into the kitchen, and whenever that tends to happen, a recipe can go wrong and it can get made into a kind of a chaotic mess in there at times. So,
well,
honestly, nothing becomes so hardened by all these changes. My wife always likes to say, she's like, how do you guys just keep your head on straight and keep going? I'm like, you just get so used to it. I'm like, I know that probably at least once a week there will be something that would derail any other industry, but for us, it's just like, cool, yeah, we're moving forward.
Par for the course. Well, the interesting thing about PE getting into some of these properties is you see this happen a lot, particularly in the last couple of years. If you follow anything in the business world, you see this happening a lot with companies that IPO. I think there's a little bit of a shift even in owners and founders who maybe want to maintain a little bit more control over their brand and their product and things, because when who you were responsible for keeping happy shifts, your values shift, and how you then run the very fabric or weave the fabric of your organization shifts as well. And when you move away from saying, well, who are our end consumers, who are our end stakeholders, to use that term, is it our students? Is it our athletes? Is it our fans? Is it our donors? Is it our alum? Who is it? And when the locus of control or maybe the balance of where that end stakeholder shifts to being somebody who maybe is outside of your institution entirely, or definitely only cares about what the end profit margin is, you're going to start to make your decisions in a very different, with a very different barometer than you would previously. And look, being able to make money is an incredible thing. Being able to make money off of sports is an incredible thing. It has created this whole industry that we all love. It's created a better product. It's created more exciting events for people to attend as fans, and created awesome, expanded economies in different markets. So I'm not saying it's all a bad thing. I'm just saying don't assume that it's all a good thing just because money is getting flushed into a system somewhere. There's a lot to be said about maintaining your primary mission, I should say, and it's what that primary mission is. Who knows? I know we're rambling a lot here on what maybe I'm just the only one that's rambling a lot, but like you said, this is all new. This is happening in real time. Every 12 hours, there's some like groundbreaking new initiative or new partner, moving into the space that in theory is going to change the entire direction of, a conference or a particular sport. So it's a lot to grapple with.
It is a lot to grapple with. I will say, I like to throw a little light in here though, of how excited are we to play NCAA college football on July 19th.
That's fair.
I don't know if you've seen it. My PTO request is in for July 19th for that Friday release date. I think one of the least productive days in the American workforce history.
Yeah. And the cool thing is everything's, yeah. Oh, 100%. And there's still a lot that's embargoed on that. So we haven't seen a ton of we've, seen some leaks here or there, but I think one of the coolest things is that it seems like they're involving a lot of the like school traditions and things. Yeah. Like I saw the Iowa wave is in there, which is pretty awesome. The Gator tunnel run is in there. Like there's some pretty cool stuff that I think when 2014, 2015 was the last iteration of it. So the advancements in game technology in the last 10 years, this is going to be a pretty sick game to play. That's for sure.
Yeah. I'm pumped. I feel like we needed to throw that in there as like, see, this is a good of this era. This is an example of some of the good that comes about is, we're going to get to play this game. And I think it's going to be sick to be able to play the game with players' last names on their jerseys. I'm not going to have to spend hours like I used to going in and manually tinkering with and creating roster.
You didn't want to stay QB7 for the entire career of your NCAA game there.
No, but what I am excited for is throughout the summer, if July is a slow time when these episodes get, maybe, oh man, what are we going to talk about? We can just talk about the dynasty that I'm going to build at Max School.
We just live stream NCAA football tournaments.
Do like Big Cat did during COVID, and it'll all be great.
Yeah, 100%. Well, it's been an interesting 3 or 4 days. Yes, as we futurecast, it's not all doom and gloom. There is a lot of really exciting things about how this model is shifting. One of them is, I think, at least part of the things that I'm excited about is how we can actually get closer to the schools, right? We've seen a lot of schools kind of keep anything that has the 3 letters of NIL in it at an arm's length. And it doesn't matter how, innocuous it is. If it says NIL, it's like, oh, we're not going to touch it with a 10-foot pole. So what do you see in our relationships with schools and things starting to shift as we move into summer and kind of plan for the fall?
Yeah, I'm seeing obviously with all of this, and along with recent NCAA guidance has been adopted, along with schools starting to hire more and more roles like the one I was formerly in at Kansas as director of NIL strategy, having point people to, oversee NIL operations and to build out their policies, but also the NCAA saying, hey, you can get more and more involved in facilitating opportunities for your athletes, things like this house settlement. Schools are starting to realize if we don't get real comfortable with NIL, we better get real comfortable with losing our top athletes. So that has forced them to make a very strategic investment in being really good at setting up their NIL operations in their departments. What that means for partners like us, it's a great thing, and for us, it allows us to become closer to the school, work more in strategy with them. I like to say we're not a licensee, we're a partner to the school's NIL ecosystem. working off their marketing calendar, getting to the point now where schools that were like, I'm okay. Now it's, all right, yeah, let's start a group text and let's talk every week about what you guys can do for us. So again, that was a little bit of a ramble, but this is creating an opportunity for schools to be very strategic with NIL and say, we're 3 years in, you're a great partner. You do things right for our athletes. You do things right for our athletic administration and our department as a whole. We're loading the wagon and we're going forward with you as a real partner. Makes us very sticky.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the end goal, right? Is to be able to allow these schools to involve themselves much more in these companies like us, or these brands that are working with their athletes already, allowing the school to help support that and really kind of vet some of the organizations as well. We've said this from the beginning. A school's job is to look out for the best interest of their student athletes and set them up for success, not just while they are at that school, but for the future. And it's an environment where you've got, people studying marketing, people studying photography, videography, people studying law, people studying whatever, you name it. If you're studying something, you're most likely at the university. So being able to allow that ecosystem, to tap in and support the growth and the maturity of this industry as it moves forward is always going to be, a good thing. So yeah, lots to look forward to in this model for sure. What these next 6 months look like, who knows? This trial House versus NCAA case was set for 2025. I believe it most likely will be settled this year, probably before the fall. Some of these plans are going to be available for students and institutions as early as 2025. So we do not have to wait too much longer to see what is all going to shake out here and what our model will look like moving forward.
For how long have we said these next 6 months are going to be crazy? Don't know what they're going to look like. And then it's just a constant repeat of a new cycle of 6 months.
Yeah. And we're not wrong. The next 6 months always are crazy. It just means that the subsequent 6 months are equally as crazy or more. So
we're not kicking the can down the road like, it's all new issues every 6 months. And
it's all crazy. All right. Let's wrap up here. Last question for you. Most important question of the pod. Who are you playing with in NCAA 25?
If they still have this feature, I'm going to create a team. My school, Texas A&M Corpus Christi, we didn't have
Corpus
football,
Christi,
but I'm going to put a football stadium right on the island, and we're going to sell that thing out. We're going to play run and gun, might even run the triple option every so often, just get pretty weird with it. And we're going to be an absolute powerhouse. But if I had to pick a school that's currently standing, I got to go with my Jayhawks. Because I'm walking in there, that's a cheat code. I'm going to walk in with my guys, Jalen Daniels and Devin Neal, the top QB RB combo in college football this year. So not exactly making it hard on myself. I'm going to walk in, maybe make a playoff year one.
I love it. I remember I asked you who your collegiate alliance lies with, and it pretty much aligns right there. You were like, it's Corpus Christi, but if we're going football or basketball, yeah, I got to rock with KU. Second question, follow up to that: are you making yourself a player in the game, and what position do you play?
Yeah, if I'm doing Corpus, I have to. Looking at that Jayhawks roster, I don't have a spot this year.
I don't even have a walk out there.
No, I love Coach Leipold. He would kick me off the field in a heartbeat. If I'm going Corpus, I got to be QB, and I'm going to bring back my long hair down to my shoulders. I'm bringing the long hair back. I'm going to sling that thing, man. We're going to be throwing for 400 yards a game. Might throw 6 picks, but
but we're airing it out. I love it. Yeah. I did the same. I think it was probably NCAA 2014. Cal Baptist also did not have a football program. So I probably spent more time creating the custom football program than I did actually playing the games, which, that's why I'm not very good. So I love it. July 19th, mark it on your calendars. Corpus Christi, we'll see if we can open source it, let other people play with Corpus Christi too. But you heard it here first. What's your number? What number are you wearing in the game?
I'll go 12. I'm a Brady guy. I'll go 12.
Tate Gillespie, the long hair, QB 12. Love it. That's it. That's all for today. We'll be on the road a little bit in June. We're going to athletes AthleteCon. We're going to NIL Summit. We're going to NACDA. So we'll share a lot of kind of our learnings and takeaways from there. I'm sure a lot of those conversations will focus on a lot of the things we were talking about today and how they're progressing. But that's it. Let's wrap it up. I'm Adam. There's Tate. This is another episode of the NIL Show. We'll catch you guys next time.